No, we're recording.
Welcome, everybody, and happy Valentine's Day. We've already been in the regular, we've already called to order the regular council meeting. We've been in a closed session, so we're gonna move on to 2.1. The meeting of the District of Lillooet be closed to pursuant, and we've done that, and we've closed it, so now we're going to public. Is there any public input? Come on up.
Thank you. Vivian Brooks Jones, and I'd like to speak as a citizen in an area B briefly, just to say that I'm so grateful to the district for allowing the pool to have been opened. I've been using it a lot and it's a very busy place, all shapes and sizes and ages and stages and kids learning. And it's a really good health benefit for me and my family. And I think it's a very good amenity for our community. And also as area B, as you likely know, I've contributed to energy efficiency in the rec center, as well as some finances towards swims, as well as learning activities in support of specifically the pool. And I just think it's an amazing amenity that we want to keep going. And I would like to continue to contribute, but I would also like for the district to step forward and be committed in a transparent way to where they're at with this amenity that we have. And thank you.
Thank you.
I was gonna say something, but now I'm gonna say what she said over again, because that's how I feel. Thank you. Exactly, she said.
Anybody else for public input? Okay, seeing none, I will move on to 4.1. Can I have a motion that February 14th, 2023 regular council meeting agenda be adopted as amended?
Mayor, there is one late item to the correspondence agenda. It's from the Lillooet Animal, sorry, I don't think that's they're applying for an SPCA grant. So that's gonna be attached as number 6 on the correspondence agenda on 10.1.
Thank you. Oh, no. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to delegations.
Oh, Matt,
First-
I just need to
Oh.
unmotion to adopt the agenda.
Okay. Counselor Weeb and Counselor Durham. Now let's move on to delegations. Sergeant Scott Clay, RCMP update. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate the time here for you guys. Just quickly wanted to kind of give you a overview from our last year for calls for service, and then just kind of a little bit of a generalized update for that. So I'm going to give you guys sort of a 5-year stat comparison, and I'm going to give the 2021 and 2022. There's going to be 2 different numbers for those. They're going to be including Lytton and not including. So in July 2021, right after the Lytton fire, we merged 2 offices together, including in that was our statting and reporting. So our numbers have this jump in them because of the incorporation of Lytton into our records reporting system. So last year, we finished off in Lillooet with a total of 2,729 calls for service. That's everything from motor vehicle accidents to false alarms to assaults. Of those 2,700 and change calls, 519 occurred in what was the Lytton area. So the corrected data, 2,210 calls for service within the Lillooet area. And that covers us from basically just past Fountain View Academy on Highway 12 to the boat launch on the north side of Duffy Lake to the hard 90 at the Half Creek Forest Service Road to somewhere up in the mountains. And that does not include the areas policed by Statly and Tribal. They have their own static system, so Pavilion, Fountain, Cayush, T-Bird, they have their own. This only includes the areas covered by the RCMP. So what we see there is a 10.9% increase in calls for service over a 5-year period. 2018, we had 1,992 calls. 2022, we had 2210. In that 5-year span, the lowest that we had was in 2019 at 1,848 calls. And our busiest year in the last 5 years was last year. Now, at this time, I don't have a breakdown of exactly what those calls were for last year in the area. We're undertaking a bit of a data quality program right now because we're noticing some certain trends, specifically surrounding mental health and substance. So what we've done is we've gone deeper into the calls from last year. And we're doing like another review on them to make sure that we've got that data categorized and classified properly. I want to make sure that, you know, when I report back to you guys in, I don't know, 4 months, 6 months type thing, that I can say unequivocally of the 2,210 calls, X number were mental health. X number had drugs and or alcohol involved, you know, because I think that's important as we look at our strategic planning and how we service and how we leverage our partners, you know, for services in the area. Within our breakdown in Lillooet, we have different municipalities, and the municipalities are not in the traditional sense like you would think, you know, like the municipality of Lillooet, the municipality of, you know, Cache Creek. It's just a classification that we use in our reporting. So we only have the 3 here: Lillooet, Goldbridge, and Steep. Goldbridge includes Braille. Of those 3 municipalities, 1,860 calls occurred within what is the municipality of Lillooet. So that would include going out on Highway 99, down on Highway 12, out to and including Richmond. So it's kind of, it's municipality, not really a municipality, I guess is the way to describe it. So what that tells me is the majority of our calls are happening within the more populated area, which makes sense. You know, we're not getting a ton of calls up at Gunway, which is a good thing. And we're able to focus. It's a long way. We're able to focus our attention and our resources, you know, in the core where the majority of the people, you know, live, work, and play. With Lytton being part of our detachment area, we've worked really hard to not compromise service delivery with the resources that we have here. So at any one given time, we have 2 police officers available and ready to respond to a call in what was the Lillooet detachment area. We have that exact same thing going on in Lytton. So I'm not drawing on Lillooet members who are working on shift to go down beyond Fountain to the Academy to respond to calls in Lytton. I have that staff and resource center. So we don't have these big gaps. We're not backing up or servicing another area because of the I guess. I know I've had a few questions posed in the community over the last year of how that's working. So I just wanted to be very clear. The only time we're down there or they're up here when we're on shift is if something major is going on and they need all hands on there. You know, serious public safety concern. Lytton is leaning very heavily on Lillooet right now in the sense of I'm just getting an office opened up for the guys down there. I'm hoping to have it open another month or so. So they've been up here a fair amount utilizing our office space, printing, faxing, that kind of stuff. once the offices open up, they will still be up here, they will still be using our cells as and when needed, and that was happening before the fire. I was in Lytton pre-fire and we didn't use our cells to have them staffed, being guard people, so we were always coming to. And Lytton also uses our court on Peter. So all this to say, we're not giving a whole lot down there. We're actually getting more than we're giving. With this review that we're doing on our files this year to make sure that we have the right stats so we're offering our service. One of the things I'm going to bring back to you guys, I just want to leave this thought is I've been working with our local partners at the Friendship Center, Victim Services, Restorative Justice, Indigenous Court, and the CAO on our situation table model. And this is where we're going to start to look at our wraparound services. How we can engage better with interior health, with mental health, with probation and corrections, both provincially and federally, to increase our service and our resource to our community members, which will hopefully decrease their involvement with the police, which will let us focus our attention more on proactive rather than reactive policing. We are very much a stat-driven organization, and numbers talk. But I really want my guys and hopefully ladies out there in the community doing stuff proactively rather than reactively bouncing from call to call to call and not even making any grounds. With that, my presentation, thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Anybody have any questions? None. Thank you very much. We appreciate everything you do.
Very much.
Okay, next delegation swims. You're all here.
For all of us.
Jennifer Leach and Lori Smith.
Or do you want to come out? You want, she made a sign she wants to show you.
So I'll carry you then. So I can put my glasses on.
Well, thank you for having us. As you can see, we have a very large group of pool supporters, and this is only a very small portion of them that came out tonight. I have several points that I want to bring forward to you guys. I was going to attempt to write a big long speech, but I'm better at speaking and telling you the facts. So SWIMS has been funding the operation of this pool for just over a year and a half, so September 2021, when we had the big fundraising push up to $200,000 to get this pool opening. And when this was put forth, council at the time was asking for data. How much does it cost to run the pool per month? What's the usership? What do we really truly have the communities backing to have this pool run? We have the data now. We know that on average, so the median cost to run the pool per month is about $10,000. Of course, in the winter time, that's going to go up, but in the warmer months, it's going to go down. So the average cost for that. We know that on average per week, we know this because our lifeguards have been putting little ticks on a paper every time a user comes into the pool, that we have 150 users per week. So we're not open full-time hours. So take that into consideration as well. We also know, so last year the inlet ports had some maintenance done to them as well as the filter. And there was conversation in the community, the pool was leaking and it's going to cause a big flood in the neighborhood in the VLA. Those inlet ports have been patched. And there is minimal water loss as well as the filter. A lot of contracting came and did patch the filter. Are those long-term solutions? Perhaps not. but there is not water leakage at this point. And those facts are available in the leak seekers report that you can ask your staff for. I've seen those documents. They've been provided to SWIMS. So it's when you guys go into budget considerations, I think that you guys need to take a good look at those. Part of the reason, actually, one other thing I'll leave with some of the successes what SWIMS has had. So we have approximately 15 kids currently signed up in this session of the swim team. These kids will be our future lifeguards. They are learning endurance and life-saving skills in this program. And because SWIMS is running that program, we have brought in just under $4,000 in revenue from 15 kids. So with adequate programming and value-added programming too, meaning while swim team is going on, there's lane swims available for the lane swimmers to come in. So there could be more revenue coming in during some of these programming. To show, and I'm using this as an example to show you guys that there is money to be made to offset the cost of running the school. Rec centers in general across Canada, municipal rec centers, recreation centers, they do not make money. There is not a rec center in Canada that does. It is a service. It is not a business. And so I hope that going forward into the budget, you guys take that into consideration. It is a service, just like our roads, just like our garbage pickup, just like the pipes in the ground. It is a service that benefits this community and has the benefits of having a pool open will long surpass some of the goals that you guys have set out in your mission and values. One of the things that SWIMS would like to ask, because it is not sustainable for SWIMS to continue using volunteer time and hours to put up the fundraising necessary to fund the operation of this cost. Like the operational cost we feel needs to be on the district. And it's not sustainable for SWIMS to continue doing this. We are volunteers. That being said, because this is a facility that is in existence, it was put in, it was planned for, it was opened in 1987, so we've had 35 years of this pool being here. Every month, every day that it is closed, it is actually fiscally irresponsible not to provide the service and maintain the infrastructure that is in place. And so we are asking for you, when you go through your budget considerations, that you put in your budget 10-month pool opening. We do not want it open during the summer, but we would like it open from September to June. That being said, with that ask, SWIMS is still willing, and it is sustainable for us to continue supporting the facility and the pool by helping providing programming like swim team. We have a grant application in for funding to provide free swimming lessons for adults who have low socioeconomic status. And with that, we're looking outside the box by even paying for the transportation for some of these folks to get here. We know that is an issue. But we are willing to help with that. We are willing to pay for training. We are willing to pay for supplies for the pool. We are willing to be a support, but we do not want to be the ones that are funding the operation of this. There was an announcement a couple of days ago, because I know you guys are all thinking budget and going, oh, more infrastructure costs. I get that. But there was, and I would like you to consider this, and I don't know if staff have talked to you about it yet, but a couple of days ago, EB announced that the Growing Communities Fund is getting an infusion of $1 billion, and all 188 municipalities within British Columbia will be getting a one-time installment of money that goes towards infrastructure, towards recreation programming. There is a whole list. And it's not quoted in the press release from the government, but I have read in several news articles that likely the minimum of what every municipality would get, so it'd be based on population size, is probably $500,000. So when you guys get that number of how much you're receiving, please take that into consideration, that the pool is a very strong contender for it. We have the data, we have the stats, we have the usership to keep us going. In addition, before I conclude, and we'll take questions as well. We also wanted to bring to light that the district has been for decades, so it goes back many, many, many years. The permissive tax exemptions every single year help not-for-profits to avoid having to pay taxes. So we've got the Friendship Center Society, the Legion, the Curling Rink, all of those permissive tax exemptions add up to thousands and thousands of dollars year after year. Those are helping buildings that you guys are not responsible for. And I'm not saying they don't deserve those PTEs. They absolutely do. However, take it into consideration. You guys are responsible for the rec center. You are responsible for the pool, and not having the funding in the budget to keep it open. It doesn't serve well when you guys are talking about treating, having fiscal responsibility and treating user groups and community members fairly. You guys will see how much the PTEs are exempt from the taxes every year, but I do believe the Legion was exempt. I think it was 2,000 last year. The Friendship Center, I think all properties total was about 7,000, and the Curling Rink was over $20,000. That is a lot of money that you guys are not collecting that could be going to services that need maintenance that you guys already have, that you are responsible for. And then one final thing to bring up. So when you guys do your budget, you look at an overview of the budget. You don't necessarily see the general ledgers of each department, and then for each facility, and then each department. But your staff has provided me with general ledgers for the rec center. And last year, Wild Swims was paying for the operation of this pool. Both the arena and the main core was subsidized for lost revenue while we were paying for the pool. And so again, treating each department or group, user group that uses this facility fairly is what we're asking for. And that was subsidized with a one-time unconditional grant. So again, you can ask your staff for that. As well as in the future, I know it hasn't come to your desks yet, but new rates and passes for the rec center are coming up, which have to be adopted via bylaw. They can't be changed. And the way it's been drafted and presented to us, that there will be an all-inclusive drop-in rate, a pool drop-in rate, and a gym drop-in rate. And we do support this because historically, all of the pool passes that have been sold in this facility, none of the revenue from those has been accounted for in the pool general ledger. All of that revenue has been accounted for in main core. So that is why, some of the reason why that we have uncovered why the pool hasn't shown revenue and doesn't make money in hindsight. It's because it's not being accounted correctly. Yeah, that's all I have to say for you. So thank you.
Sorry.
How much does you say you have 150 people coming in there a week? And, the cost you use approximately $100,000 that you're saying that we want to cost the pool, but the pool's gonna cost
Yeah,
for 10 months. How much of that $100,000 does your little group and whatnot
we
take in?
take in for
Yeah,
the
like,
revenue.
You say you've been running, yeah,
You're,
but you say you've been running the pool now.
no, we are funding the operation.
Okay, how many what's the funding? What
The
much funding have you done?
We raised $200,000 in 2021 to open that pool. Because we were told that's what it would cost to keep it open for 10 months,
200,000?
$200,000. It was a rough guess from staff trying to guess from the little data that they had, past history of what it would cost.
And you've done it for $10,000 or for 100?
That is how much, so we have the funds in our account and we've been giving installments to the district to cover the operational costs. And we've been getting financial updates from staff over periods of time. And for last year, which would have been a whole year, we can see, because we started out with 200,000 and we know how much money we have left. So take the median, the average cost of that, it's about $10,000.
Okay, so in actual fact, what are you asking us for then?
I'm asking you to put $100,000 in your budget for this year to keep the pool open.
So that means that this little group that you've got going here that earned $200,000 doesn't need to do anything anymore.
That's not true. We are offering support to continue to pay for programming, for supplies. We want to be here to lift you guys up. So what I'm essentially saying, we've already done all the legwork to make this successful. So we are handing you an opportunity to have a win with the public with, and by the way, the success of this pool is reaching boundaries beyond this community. We have the attention of the top guys of Interior Health who want to run physio programs. We have the attention of the schools who want to have swimming lessons, but in order to have any of those planned, that needs to be open. They can't plan and but go to their budget, guys, without a commitment from you guys. If you guys commit to the 10 months by putting that money in your budget, you are having a win without having to do any work. You can take the accolades, so I'm just handing those to you because we've already done the work. We have spent thousands of hours volunteering for that money. We have, sorry, I tried. Through. We're not gonna just stop, but we don't want to be paying for the operations. Yeah.
So I have a question. So for the 200,000, you guys did an awesome job raising that. 200,000, and that was in 2021 that you raised that, the whole year?
Yes, because we opened in October of 2021.
So then at $10,000, there should be enough to run 2023?
We have been continually paying for it beyond the 10 months. So we've been paying for it all for this year, all of last fall. So September, October, November, December, 12. We've been paying for it for 18 months, actually.
Okay. All right, so 18 months, and then we generally put in about 20,000 for, that's our contribution historically.
It's actually more than that. What was brought to council at the very beginning of this experiment. The decision was made based on what was understood at the time as the annual average loss, revenue loss. Since discovered, accounting was done differently. So I think it was more like $50,000 or $60,000 was put into it at the time, the way the accounting was done. But the core of it is that the district was funding an estimated 3 to 4 months of operations per year. And if the fundraising from the community that swims the charge on, they took that 3 months and extended it to 10 months a year. which allow better staffing.
So we were funding for 3 to 4 months and then they were funding for 6 months.
Plus the additional, because we have not actually physically closed the pool, we're continuing to pay it forward while we wait for a decision from you guys.
Okay.
I'm gonna start.
Yeah, I know, because I think the numbers are a little bit off there, but so my question is, so you guys are not gonna do any fundraising or what about any grant
No, we want
applications
to keep,
for running the pool? Not for the programs in it, but for running it.
we want to eventually be able to write a gaming grant. In order to do that, we need to have programs to show. We need to have expenses like office costs, room rentals, pool rentals, all of those things. Because we've been so hyper-focused on just the operations, we have not had any of that. So yes, long-term, we want to do that. But we need to have the programming first, and get those steps out of the way. So that's why we've taken on the swim team right now. The grant for the adult swimming lesson, we've written through the participation grant for June. So we're still waiting to hear back for that, and we are willing to spend the time to continue writing grants. But in order to have the commitment, because there's no sense in us writing a grant for September, the pool is going to be closed. And the other thing too, that I want you guys to take in mind, so you have 1 full-time lifeguard and 4 student lifeguards. And we have the community members, they want it open longer, they want Aquafit. So we ideally either need to train up more. The Aquafit program or training is like 200 hours. None of the staff currently are willing to put 200 hours of training into something that they don't know that they're going to have a job with in a couple of months. So they are also waiting for you guys to make that decision.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Counselor.
Just back, so you're saying you've got 15 kids that are signed up for swimming lessons and they're going to be, you're mentoring them to be your lifeguard.
It's swim team, so that's
Swim
gonna
team.
take a couple of years, because in order to be a lifeguard, you have to be 14 years of age.
Mhm.
You go get your bronze cross and your bronze medallion and so on and so forth. So currently in our junior program, we have, I think we have 10 or 11 junior kids. So that ranges from age 7 to 10. So those kids are not going to be ready to be lifeguards for a couple of years. Okay, but the kids in the junior program, one is considering, she turns 14 in a couple of months. She's considering taking it, and the other 2 will be of age to take those programs in the next year or so. So the thing is, with becoming a lifeguard, you have to have your endurance and your strength. So it's really hard to ask somebody off the street to go and get the training for a lifeguard. We have had, and we have paid, Swims has paid for over the years, so many people to take that training, and they cannot pass the required amount of laps and the required amount of time to get that certification, because they need to have a pool to swim in consistently to have that endurance and that strength up. So that's been our challenge, and it's been literally chasing our tail year after year when we close the pool, because we just don't have that. So we don't want to lose the momentum that we have gained. And so I'm not here to give you guys an ultimatum. I'm here to give you guys the facts of what we're looking at.
Counselor McMary.
I'm all for it. Don't get me wrong. How much money are we putting into the pool now?
It's a tax base. That will be shown during the budget presentations. Yes, our manager of recreation will go over that detail in your face.
I'd be interested to give these guys a program.
So the way we're looking at it is so different as it's changed through this partnership for the last couple of years. So I think it'd be really good to have the manager and or sort of the chief financial officer go over their view of how it is now.
Because obviously they're very good fundraisers. I don't want them to quit. That's my, I don't want them to quit.
There you go.
I would hire them.
Counselor Reed.
I don't actually have a question. I have a comment. Am I allowed to make a comment? I'm really thankful that he's put in the hours of fundraising that he's did. And I'm really thankful that he put in the hours to get that data for us and the miscommunication that has been going on for years around that pool. And from talking to Andrea, I never realized how much our homegrown lifeguards can make in the real world. This is a profession. So we are actually opening up job opportunities for our high school students or whatever as they move on. I did not realize that. And then I started looking at, because I have people in Calgary and whatnot, like these are high paying, decent jobs. And for us to be able to give that opportunity to some of the kids in this community is amazing. And like I say, with us working on seniors housing and seniors this and seniors that, I think we really need to look at keeping it open as well, because seniors also need something to do besides sit around in the winter and get depressed.
And speaking on what Councilor McNary has said, the reason we're coming to you now is because we want this in the back of your minds as you go into those budget considerations. We want to be supporting you guys in this venture. We don't want it the other way around. And I know the morale around the pool is hinging on whether or not that some of these lifeguards are still gonna have this job. And the other thing I just want to touch on, and I will stop talking about it, is that this rec center, for so many years, we've said it's the heart of the community. It is the hub. The amount of people that come through this center because of that pool is astounding. If you come and sit down here when swim team is going on, the hustle that's in this, and people are communicating, they're engaging, they're learning about other programming that's in the pool. Like, it is a really good opportunity. And I just want to say too, you guys have really amazing staff in this facility. So both your manager, your lifeguards, even right down to your janitorial staff, they are amazing. And I do not think that over multiple years that this rec center has had the infusion of money that it needs to be sustainable. You have the staff with the experience and the knowledge to get the programming up where it needs to be, so that you're not having to pay copious amounts of money year after year to have it continue going. Like, it will not be, I'll be very clear too, because rec centers do not make money. It will never be cash positive, but you will be able to cover costs more efficiently with the knowledge from the staff that you guys currently have. So just wanted to put that out there. So,
Okay, well, does anybody else have any questions?
We've been fundraising, you might be able to make.
Well, I was gonna say in closing, that I think that we will take all of this into consideration, because I don't think anybody in this town wants to close the pool. Everybody wants the pool. It's, but it's what we can afford. And I would like to say that we will give this serious consideration during our financials that are upcoming and starting on Thursday. I would like to see part of, or like somewhere within those financials, your bank statements and see what they entail. And also, I would like you to also consider, doing that fundraising again. It's, there's lots of our different societies out there that do that. And I'm not saying all of it, but I'm saying parcel, just a consideration. Just take it back, think about it, think what you're doing as we think what we're doing.
So that's part of our negotiation. We're willing to keep going.
Right.
We can get the commitment, but we're not going to put that effort forth if we don't have a commitment that it's open. So that's what we're asking for. More so than the money portion of it, we're asking for the commitment that you guys are going to do everything in your power to keep that pool open. So
Thank you for your delegation.
Thank you.
Well done.
cookies for everybody an opportunity.
Chocolate.
Oh, yeah.
We could renovate the outside, you know.
No swear. Okay, moving on, to 6.1, public and statutory hearings. The 22-004 zoning amendment bylaw number 2023-002 to allow site-specific carriage home in RR1 zone on private water and septic.
Madam Mayor, zoning amendment bylaw Z 22-004 is for the property located at 1321 Highway 12, which is part of the same subdivision that created the lots from Horse Beach Road. The District of Little Bit zoning bylaw specifically requires that any properties that wish to have a carriage house be connected to municipal water and municipal sewer. However, best practices generally agree that such a blanket provision is excessive and that the lot size does play a factor. Generally, when limiting dwelling units on lots serviced by sewer and well, the requirements in the standard practice manual is that you should not allow carriage homes on lots less than 1 hectare unless municipal water is present. However, when a lot is at least a hectare or approximately 2.5 acres, and the builder can prove adequate separation from their septic system in a well and a backup septic area, then there is no reason to limit the construction of an accessory dwelling. There are some further additions to the zoning, including the accessory buildings being in front of the principal dwelling, in front of this case being closer to the road, as well as some provisions for height to allow residential accessory building or structure to be 7.87 meters in height, which is also reasonable on a large lot of significant separation between neighbors. Thank you.
Okay, call the public hearing of February 14th, 2023 to order. This public hearing is being convened pursuant to section 464 of the Local Government Act to consider proposed District of Little Rock bylaw number 2023-002. The proposed bylaws and related information, including written comments received to date, if any, is available as part of the agenda package. At this public hearing, all persons wishing to speak will be given an opportunity to be heard. However, I ask that all who speak at this meeting restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaw. Those wishing to speak at this public hearing commence their remarks by stating their name, and that the written comments be submitted to the staff table before closure of the public hearing. I will now ask the Director of Corporate and Development Services to outline the specifics of the proposed bylaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I jumped the gun and did that already.
I know. So. Got me a little. Have any written submissions been received since the agenda has been published?
Not since it's been published.
Okay, I declare this public hearing open. At this time, I ask if there is anyone who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaws. After you've spoken once, I will ask that you wait until all other members of the public have had the opportunity to be heard before speaking a second time. Please stand at the lectern to speak. For a second time, is there anyone who wishes to speak further to this proposed bylaw? For a third and final time, is there anyone who wishes to speak further to the proposed bylaw? Hearing none, I declare the public hearing closed. Will someone please make the motion that all written and verbal submissions regarding bylaw number 2023-002 up to and including February 14th, 2023 be received and the public hearing be closed at
It's 47.
5:47. 5:47 PM.
I'll move.
Thank you. Seconder, Councilor Klein. Good. Okay. 7.1, will someone please move that the January 17th, 2023 regular council meeting minutes be adopted as presented? Councilor Klein, second by Councilor Reed. All in favor? 8, business arising from the minutes. Can I please have staff Taylor speak to both 8.1 and 8.2?
Yes, so thank you, Madam Mayor. These are just items that staff is still actioning out of the last council meeting. The first one being a request from council to the Agricultural Lands Commission to come and give a presentation to council. We did receive the correspondence from the ELC saying that was an option. However, they haven't responded yet to schedule that, so we'll continue to try and do that for a future council meeting. Item 8.2 is the deferred item from the January 17th regular council meeting to do with the subdivision variance at 647 Summer Street. We are still working with the applicants. They were okay with the delay while we're still trying to figure out what options are available to protect the capital. That. So I am.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Okay, 9, rise and report. Any, none? Okay, we can move on to correspondence and petitions. I ask, does anyone wish to remove one or more of the now 6 correspondence items under 10.1 of the agenda? Please raise your hand. Councilor Kwan?
I would, that item number 1, the TRU letter of support, and also item number, I guess, what is it, 6, for the Lillooet Animal Advocacy Society be removed from the correspondence report for discussion under section 18 new business of the February 14, 2023 regular council meeting, and that the remaining correspondence be included for information dated February 9th, 2023.
Well done. Okay.
I'll second that.
What? Any further items to be removed? Seeing none, okay, item 1 and 6, and can I have a motion that 2 to 5 be,
The most names.
okay. First and second. 11, reports from committees of council and commissions. Well, I didn't think I had to. I tried to. Okay, all in favor? All right. Now, any reports from committees of council and commissions? Yeah. Okay, reports and presentations of staff. 12.1.
Ms. LaRue, are you with us?
Thank you through the mayor. I'm sorry, I didn't know I was going to be speaking to this. I thought I was just going to answer questions if they came up. This is a request from the SLRD to increase the requisition from the District of Lillooet for the invasive species management. I understand they have some technical difficulties. The bylaw has to go through the ministry. So regardless of the outcome tonight, none of this will come into effect this year. It won't be until next year. The long and short of it is they're requesting to increase the maximum requisition for the invasive species from all the areas that contribute by just under $19,000. The District of Lillooet's portion of that is 5%. So this would increase the annual requisition that the SLRD requisitions from us that we put on our property tax notices for them by just under $1,000. It's about $950 per year. That's in total. That's the total increase and would bring the amount that the district contributes in total for this program to just under $4,700.
To add to that, so Whistler pays 20%, Squamish pays 20%. Area C, which is the Pemberton area, pays 20%, and Area D, which is Furry Creek, pays 20%. We pay 5%, Pemberton pays 5%, Area A and B each pay 5%. So to the average household taxpayer, it's about $3. And we are increasing it by 70 cents per household. It's sometimes easier to understand it in per household instead of, you know, the great number. But yeah, it's 71 cents per household per year. And like Mrs. Lulu just said, I don't even think it's gonna happen this year. It's not gonna be for another year. It's something we already pay into. Councilor McNary.
I would like to know what it does for us.
Well, the invasive species, they're doing quite a bit right now. They're, and it's all the way from like Furry Creek down there, Sea Sky, and all the way up to over and beyond, and yeah, they're just identifying those species. They've got a lot of programs going. They have a lot of grant funding that they're doing as well. They do quite a bit for our area. They do notifications of what they have. I just signed up actually to on Facebook to find out what they're doing, and I am going to start posting all of their news and their funding opportunities and everything on.
I'd like to understand that a bit.
I will send that. Yeah.
They, as far as I know too, funding, and actually they do fund services, but some of that funding does go to the Lillooet Regional Invasive Species Society here. So they're actually quite active during the summer, where they are actually employing people and hiring summer students as well. And they hand out pamphlets to tourists coming in and out of the area. They actually go to ranches. They will actually start helping with showing where species are to get rid of some of these things. So it is quite active here, and it's actually a boost for some of our employment for some of our younger people as well.
That's good, they're doing it good, that's funny.
Councilor,
Lots of education.
The agricultural sector in the area has a great interest in preventing the spread of invasive species. And taking certain species can destroy a crop. And so having an organization that actually goes out and identifies spots and treats spots of invasive species is very, very useful for sustaining agricultural industry. So, it goes a lot of different ways.
They also work too with the waterways. So with boats coming in and out of the area, bringing like mussels or other sort of things there, which is detrimental to some of our fish life as well. So it's not just the plant life, it's looking at the aquatics as well.
which is why they're paying 20% of it down there, because a lot of
They're
it
all
is
water.
down there. Councilor Reed.
Yeah, through the mayor, I think we have to look at it as a management and control service, so to speak, so. Like they identify it and then they control it, or put out the word how to control it. It's quite interesting. I like it.
I will send it to you.
Okay.
I'll get you on the mailing list. I'll get everybody on the mailing list, actually. Okay. Any further comments on 12.1? Okay, so like I said, I don't think this is even gonna happen this year, but I am going to put it forward. Will somebody move that council give participating area approval by consenting on behalf of the electors of the district of Lillooet to the adoption by the Squamish Lillooet Regional District of proposed SLRD bylaw 1802-2023 cited as Squamish Lillooet Regional District Invasive Species Management and Control Service Establishment Bylaw number 1541-2017 Amendment Bylaw 1802-2023. Counselor Reed, Counselor Plan, all in favor? And ring. Okay, 13 bylaws and resolutions, 13.1 DBP 23-001 894 Eagleson Crescent variance to setbacks and encroachment agreement. Will staff please introduce the recommendation of this?
Madam Mayor, you'll notice I waited my turn this time.
I do. That kind of money.
So DBP 23-001 is to consider an application to vary the siting of 2 accessory buildings and legitimize the siting of the existing house at 894 Eagleson Crescent. The property was brought to staff's attention through a bylaw complaint. Upon review, it was determined that most of the accessory buildings from the property were not within the required setbacks, and 2 of the structures were either fully or partially over the rear property line. I will be referring to the buildings as shown on page 43 of your agenda package. In speaking with the current owners, they have agreed to move shed 1 onto the property. And staff have considered favorably a 0 lot line setback for this structure, as the rear lot line is adjacent to a hill supporting Columbia Street. The placement of the structure should not impact adjacent properties or cause sightline issues on the adjacent road. Shed 2 is also proposed to have a 0 lot line setbacks, and the owners will undertake to register an encroachment agreement on title between the district and the property to allow that half-meter portion of the encroachment to remain. While not part of this application, nor the enforcement action, staff noted that the house was situated too close to the southernmost property line, shown by the blue oval on the permit Schedule B. This is not uncommon and is generally something we consider to be legal non-conforming when it is an older structure. However, since an application was already before council, we try to legitimize these minor encroachments without requiring any additional work from the owner to avoid any future conflicts on their behalf. Staff are recommending that DBP 23-001 be approved. Madam Mayor, is now appropriate to open the floor for anyone who wishes to speak for or against the variance, starting with the applicant. Speaking of the variance is now compulsory.
Thank you. Is the applicant here or online?
I don't believe they're online now.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for staff? Councilor Reed?
So
Through the mayor. When I was reading it and it says that this will be grandfathered in, so to speak. Does that stay with the property or with the owner? So if this owner were to sell. That property is still going to stay the way it is until such time as somebody removes a shed or whatever, and then they can't rebuild it. Is that right?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. The variances run with the land. They're not tied to any property owner or person, as long as everything stays the way that it was considered by council. If council chooses to grant variance.
Okay, Councilor Reed?
Is this an example of things gone wrong and not
following suit to codes or things, or is this just the way it always was and we just put things wherever we felt like? I don't know if I worded that properly, but I'm like.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
On a night.
Most of the structures on this property wouldn't have required a building permit. They were less than 10 by 10. So it wasn't so much an issue of not conforming to building code for most of them. But they are still structures. They are still required to meet setbacks. That's to prevent people from butting buildings right up against property lines, which can create fire hazards. And it's also, a neighbor may not want to look at someone's shed right on the property line. We haven't been actively enforcing these unless we know it's a fire or life safety issue, unless it comes to staff sort of violent complaint.
I was just curious as to whether the previous owner knew this or if this has been like something that's been an eternity in making.
The bylaw complaints came to staff in June of 2020. Enforcement action started taking place almost immediately. And then I believe the property was sold in October without a resolution.
Councilor McNary, did you have a question?
No, the answer.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have a question? Councilor DeBruin?
Is it inappropriate to learn who filed the complaint?
Yes.
Then
Okay, go ahead.
I guess it's more to learn things and that sort of stuff, but this is a matter where somebody purchased something that wasn't according to code. And there were a number of realtors involved. And I sort of get the disappointment that comes through this letter, and I've heard other situations where buyers buy something and later it appears that they didn't buy what they were thinking that they were buying. Now, it is my understanding that it's actually a realtor's responsibility to advise buyers and sellers in these matters, but is there something as a district that we can do in order to minimize these situations where buyers are buying something that is not according to code? Because shed number 4, which they're going to be taking down, was a substantial structure and was, had value to it, and understand there are other situations like that in town where people are buying things they're not either permanent or they're not according to code or that sort of stuff. So my question, I guess, is what as a district can we do in order to minimize those disappointments?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's actually an excellent question. Over the last 3 years, we have been consolidating all of our property files and getting them digitized so they're much easier to locate and disseminate that information to anyone who needs it. As part of most sales, property owners, real estate agents, or potential buyers will file a request with the district to have any information that is in those property files. When we're going through bylaw enforcement action, the bylaw enforcement files don't make it into the property files, but we have started putting memos into the property files that outline what the general deficiencies are, so that if anybody does request the file, as was the case on this property, they would have access to all of that information and any deficiencies and the remedies that need to be undertaken in order to bring it into compliance. That did happen from the district side on this. What happened after that is between the third parties.
Thank you. That answer your question, okay?
Sorry, just a follow-up. I didn't understand the last part. Is that the district did do that in this case?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The district released all of the information that we had, including all of the information on the enforcement action that wasn't protected under freedom of information. So that included all of the buildings that weren't conforming to the setbacks and the remedies that the district would require in order to satisfy the bylaw, which in this case was applying for a variance that was provided to anyone who requested it.
And it was prior to the sale?
Yes.
Yeah. And this information, sorry, as a follow-up, all this information is open to the public, whoever requests it or has an interest in the property, can request this information?
They can, for anyone in the public, Madam Mayor would have to go through a Freedom of Information and Access to Records request. That's because there is private information in these property files. Our property owner does have access to their property file through district staff, because there are previous owners in there that we need to make sure their information is protected, but we don't make them go through that FOI process, as well as any real estate agent on the purchasing or seller side that has either a listing contract or an offer of purchase and sale that's been signed by the owners.
Thank you. Any further questions? Counselor McBarry?
On cases like this, this is definitely, old school. Now, I'm like, sort of, sorry if you know what I'm saying. How do we deal with this? Because there is lots of this. How are we gonna go forward and deal with this? So we don't make things hard on everybody.
Thank you, Madam. The tack we've been taking is as things come up, we're not going out and taking a hard line enforcement on just about anything in the district, again, unless it's fire or life safety related. Or if it's bothering someone else, and that's why the bylaw complaints process and investigation process exists. Unfortunately, it's going to happen to some people, but as we're bringing the district into compliance, we're kind of taking a one at a time approach. So if somebody is applying for the building permit to put an addition onto their house, we can't issue a permit for that if there is non-conformities elsewhere on the property. There are some exceptions to that rule where they would be covered under legal nonconformity, where that's under the Local Government Act. If at a time in the past it was legally put on the property and then the rules changed, that's what people consider grandfathering. In this case, there were structures actually off the property line, so we wouldn't have been able to issue that until they rectified that situation.
Yeah, I was just, I wasn't actually speaking. It was just general.
Okay. Any further? Okay. Someone please move that the development variance permit DBP 23-001 at 894 Eagleson Crescent, legally described as Lot 8, Plan KAP 27949, District Lot 596, Lillooet Land District, to vary the following provisions in the District of Land Zoning Bylaw 2018 number 454 as written. Councilor Reed, seconded by Councilor DeBruin, in favor. Carried. Okay, 13.2, DVP 23-002. 1160 Mopar Road, variance to setback for accessory buildings and water pipes size. Mr. Taylor?
Madam Mayor, the references I will be making in this presentation are shown on page 51 of your agenda package. The applicant has requested to keep the accessory structure on this property where it is within the new property lines because too close to the structure. My apologies, this property is going through a subdivision of this kind. The setbacks being proposed are from 3 meters to 0.61 meters for the rear property line and 3 meters to 1.2 meters for the interior side property line. We are also including a variance to the provision to site a building 3 meters behind the principal dwelling. This provision has often been varied in the past, and we will not be including it in the next draft of the zoning bylaw for council's consideration. Finally, as a variance request was already before council, staff are requesting a variance to the SDS bylaw, which would require a 150 millimeter water line. The district engineer has determined that a 50 millimeter water line would be sufficient and in fact better for the system as a whole. Staff are recommending that DDP 23-002 be approved. And then the mayor, it is now appropriate to open the floor for anyone who wishes to speak for or against the variance, starting with the applicant.
Thank you. Is the applicant here or online?
No.
Does anybody else wish to speak to this? Okay, I'll open it up to us. Does anybody have any questions for staff? Councilor McNary.
I didn't get the water line size. We wanted to leave it at the 50 millimeter and not take it to the 150 millimeter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At this time, there's actually a 25 millimeter service running off of Main on Mohawk Road. The reason for this is because it's only servicing one dwelling right now, which is the property behind the country store. So I suppose when it was originally put in, they just ran what would normally be a residential service off of Main. Since we're now going to be serving two, we need at least the capacity for two 25 millimeter services, and there isn't any ability for the subdivision down here. So the district engineer has decided through an on-site design review, basically, that a 50 millimeter service, basically a 50 millimeter main down that lane, which they're also going to be improving the lane as well with a proper turnaround for emergency services. And then those two 25 millimeter services coming on to serve the now two properties that we'll be back.
Okay, Councilor Flynn.
Well, through the mayor, actually, Mr. Taylor sort of answered a couple of them. I just thought that we should maybe look at this one a bit more because this is the first one since we've become a council that we've had more feedback responses that were against it than actually for the development there. So one of my questions was about the water lining, which basically, is there enough water for that property with still supplying the current property? And then also because this is zoned as commercial as well, there is a chance that if it's subdivided, that property could be turned into commercial, which again would mean putting the water line back to the larger, correct? Would there be still enough water for everybody in either of those scenarios?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. It is correct. It is currently zoned commercial. It could have been turned into commercial at any time over the past probably 30 years. I believe it came into the district in 1996 as commercial out of the regional district. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of call in staff's opinion. It's not going to be developed as commercial. However, if someone does go to put a commercial development on this, it will trigger the requirements of the subdivision development servicing bylaw, which does require 150 millimeter water main to service a commercial property. And they will have to provide us with their demand calculations, which we will put through the water model to ensure that there is sufficient flow for what they want to put on that property. I will also say that in the recent OCP adopted in October of 2021, all of the properties except the country store, which are currently designated as commercial, have been redesignated to rural residential. And in the new zoning bylaw coming up, or if council decides they want to do it sooner, we can rezone those properties all to rural residential or suburban residential.
Thank you. Okay, Councilor Flynn.
Through the mayor, you sort of answered too about the road. I know that is actually a district road called Herb Road, which I found quite interesting there. I did actually drive down that road. I did drive down that road and it is a single lane and there's no way that there's no turnaround and I had to back out to be able to do that. What sort of upgrading, you mentioned something because there's no way emergency vehicles would be able to get in and out of there if something did happen.
Thank you. So there was a variance before council on this property. It was early 2021. And they asked to not have to pave the road. So council granted them a variance to do gravel crush, but they're still going to have to construct a road. Construct a highway. There's a difference between a road and a highway. A road is just the land that has no title on it. And it includes the shoulder, it includes anything right up to the property lines, but it may not be constructed. So they're actually going to be constructing something within this road dedication that is a little wider, a little more usable, and has that turnaround for the emergency vehicles. What's there now is a historic driveway that is just roughed in. And when this road dedication was taken, I assume during a subdivision at some point in the past, it was never constructed and was probably to continue her road through to
Reynolds Road.
Reynolds Road, thank you. Through to Reynolds Road upon the subdivision of any other properties down there, assuming that sewer would have gone up there at some point. Since sewer has been sort of nixed for the time being on the hot farm, that's why we're starting to consider these large lot panhandle subdivisions up there. And her road is very likely never going to be constructed as an actual road that needs ongoing reconstruction or snow plowing or anything of that nature.
Do we not still have to maintain that road?
It would have to be maintained, but the maintaining of a gravel crush road is much easier than a constructed paved road.
Okay.
It might involve some grade.
Councilor Bruin, did you have a question?
Yeah. Two, but one is the setbacks. So the setbacks are to deal with these two existing structures. Will the setbacks apply to any new structures on any of these two properties?
Madam Mayor, it will. This variance is specific to the structures that are on this survey. It is not a blanket variance for any other structure that wants to go on there. Sorry, it is specific to this one building.
Okay.
There, all other structures would have to meet 3 meter
Okay.
setbacks from any, yeah, or whatever the zoning bylaw says.
And the second question is, the variance presupposes that it is going to be a residential use, while maintaining commercial zoning, which just seems very awkward in this matter. Is it possible to rezone it residential through the same DVP, or do we need to put in more work to get it to RR1?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is a different process. If council wants to direct staff to begin that process, we can. My recommendation is just to wait until the zoning bylaw comes up, where we will be looking to put those into the rural residential. In the hot farm, we're looking at a suburban residential zone to distinguish it from the rural residential lots over on East Lillooet. But if council doesn't want to wait, they can. It just means that takes priority and everything else scooches back a bit.
On this now, it's commercial. No, what's gonna stop him from jamming a building in there right up to the lots, right up to the property line?
Madam Mayor, the lot lines, some of the lot lines in the commercial zone are 0 meters. So at this point, the biggest consideration would be fire separation. And there are requirements for that in the code. It would be building a big firewall, kind of like this happened at the Jones Market site, but it would be possible, and it has been possible for the last 30 years.
But was it possible for them to do that if it wasn't subdivided?
Yeah.
I mean, it was still a commercial property, so.
Yes, thank you. Yes, it would have been. They may have had to remove the dwelling that was on there. But yes, it has been possible, and it is possible on a number of these properties at this time. They wouldn't be able to put a residential use right up against it without sticking up a big firewall. Most people aren't gonna want to do that unless it's an apartment building, which potentially could also be put on this property, but would require more water and a connection to the municipal sewer system.
Also, we,
Through the mayor to staff, I'm reading these, as Councillor Flan said, we've got all these negative ones here about this. But a lot of the concerns are about noise and about marijuana and about barking dogs and about, have we had any complaints filed on the property? Because I'm thinking if something like that was bothering me, I wouldn't be waiting until they put in for a variance of some kind. I would lodge a complaint at the time it was irritating me. So I just want to kind of separate the two.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Usually when we open these files, we do a bylaw enforcement look, and if there's any active bylaw enforcement, we deal with it before we bring it forward. Seeing that this even made it to my desk, and I'm going to, at this point, say there are no active files on this property. I'm sorry, I do not know what the history of it is.
That's fine, thank you. That's what I wanted to know, because like I say, from reading these, I'm like, really?
Mr. Danica.
To the mayor, if I may add as well, our nuisance bylaw for noise complaints also requires that two independent neighbors file a complaint for noise. So even if there had been a single neighbor complaining, if there's not those two, it wouldn't get into the bylaw. So those records need to be considered.
Well, I appreciate that. Like I say, sometimes people just like to talk.
Councillor Plant.
Through the mayor, just back to what Councillor McNary was saying about the commercial. Is that the only commercial zoning there, or most of the other properties commercial?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe this is the northernmost property, and then there's the country store, the property behind the country store, and 2 or 3 below it. We'd love it.
Yes, I have. I have a map on the wall now.
So the 2 additional properties below it are also commercial.
Yes, on this side of
Yeah,
the country.
in this same area, we also have some institutional zoning and some industrial zoning. I can only imagine this is a holdover from when it was in the regional district and it wasn't addressed during the 2011 and 2018 zoning bylaw updates. We have addressed it in the OCP, and the new zoning bylaw again will be making all of this rural residential.
So Councillor McNary's concerns could pop up at other properties, just not this one. About the zero. Yeah.
More than just this property,
Yeah.
yes.
However, I am concerned about it being a commercial property that we're subdividing and not a residential property that we're subdividing.
Yes, and this is another quirk of the existing zoning bylaw. The commercial zones have been treated as almost de facto residential zones as well, which is just preparing you now might create some conflict when we go looking at the next zoning bylaw. The current commercial zoning then extends, switching gears a bit, all the way down Main Street, and a lot of Main Street is single family dwellings. I believe this was probably done to avoid conflict, but that's again just pushing the problem further into the future, and we're here now in the future and having to deal with it. So I think they were commercial in order to try and encourage some sort of neighborhoods commercial use out there, and an expansion of the country store. That obviously has not happened, and we haven't heard any rumblings of that happen, and these permits don't usually just materialize. Especially in a location where there is only residential water and there is sewer. If something comes forward, or if there are rumblings, council can at any time ask us to rezone the property. If a rezoning bylaw is being prepared, we can hold building permits. So there are ways that you can sort of give us the time to get the bylaw forward, but if something happens, you still have an opportunity to get in there.
Do you foresee us as letting a commercial property subdivide, that's going to be problems in the future by setting that precedence now?
I don't, because it's subdividing within the regulations that it would be for residential property anyways.
Right.
So once we do rezone it, we'll still be in conformance with the subdivision requirements of a rural residential 1 property.
Councilor McNary.
Okay, is there any way that we can let this subdivision go through and still make sure they conform to the rural residential?
By rezoning.
But that, we'd have to rezone it there.
Yes.
But if we didn't rezone it right away, he could pretty much, he'd have to do his water line, and that would be about it then.
Again, Madam Mayor, if any application or even rumblings for a commercial use come forward, that would trigger the requirements of the SDS bylaw, making them responsible for upgrading that line from the 50 to the 150. There's going to be lots of heads up if anybody comes forward. They're actually in a more dubious position now than working through this. They're in a more dubious position to build a commercial unit on here because they don't have access to that main right off the which would provide the
Okay.
appropriate, commercial.
So we don't need to be scared about that, is what you're kind of.
Madam Mayor, I wouldn't be. I'm, as you know, a bit of an alarmist, but if anything is untoward, I'll bring it up. This doesn't seem like it's too out of left field. I hope I don't put my foot in my
Put it out to the.
I was very reluctant on this matter just because it was commercial, but I understand now, if I hopefully understand correctly, is that if there would be any activities towards putting in something that would be commercial, it would have to pull a building permit. If they pull a building permit, we have a time in order to rezone it to rural residential. So like I said, they can't just build a warehouse or something. And so with that, I feel we should.
That being said, I am detecting some apprehension. And if council does want to direct me to start preparing a bylaw to make all of those properties rural residential, we can do it. It may just add a little bit of time onto a few extra applications that we have, as we'll prioritize that.
When's our ETA for the zoning bylaw to be done?
Oh, end of the year.
So he would have to, he's gonna have to do this road first. If we were to approve this, he's gonna have to make it so that this road is wide enough
Well, that's,
for an emergency vehicle to get down there and turn around.
and that's actually another great point. The frontage requirements for commercial are higher than the requirements for residential. Council considered the variance to allow a gravel crush road with all the information that this was going to be developed as residential. So that variance wouldn't carry forward and let them then do a commercial development with the gravel crush road.
Okay.
And considering the owner is asking for this under the first applications because of costs, it's unlikely that before the zoning bylaw is done, that something will come forward for commercial use.
So,
And I think lastly, on the hot farm, everybody's worried about the water, and I think it's the summer sprinkling with more people coming in to the hot farm and densifying that we won't have enough water to suffice.
I normally wouldn't talk about this during a DDP application, but since you opened it. It's less of a water supply and distribution issue and more an issue with the water treatment plant during the spring freshet, which creates problems with the filtrate when the freshet adding all the debris into the water for the runoff. It gets into the filter units and it lowers the amount of water we can actually get in there to treat. But when that's running at full tilt, there's enough water for that.
A good clarification.
Yeah. So it happens over the summer.
Being
It starts to get hot.
some of these responses were due to that. Yes. Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Or call it? Okay, will someone please move that the development variance permit DBP 23-002 for the proposed subdivision at 1150 Mohawk Road, legally described as Lot 11, Plan KAP 10764, District Lot 162, Lillooet Land District, to vary the following provisions as written, be approved. Councilor McNary, Councilor DeBruin, all in favor? Sorry. Thirteen point three. 722-004 zoning amendment bylaw number 2023-002 to allow site-specific terrace homes in R1 zone on private water and septic, third reading and adoption.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have nothing to add from the public hearing other than staff are recommending that it be read a third time and finally adopted.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I ask that somebody approve that the district of Lillooet zoning bylaw 2018 number 454 amending bylaw number 2023-002 be read a third time. And that district of Lillooet zoning bylaw 2018 454, amending bylaw number 2023002 be adopted. Councillor Weed, seconded by Councillor DeBruin, all in favor? Great. Okay, 13.4, endorsement of 2023 UBCM resolution. Okay,
Jeff, just as a quick intro, this follows directly from council's municipal objectives adopted last meeting. And so one of the first things for staff to do, and this is because of the timeline of the process of resolutions getting to UBCM, is they strongly recommend the resolutions go through the local association, which for us is SILGA, Southern Interior Local Government Association. In your 4 years on council, you're going to learn so many acronyms. So if you ever see an acronym in a report and we haven't spelled it out in full, please wave your finger at us.
I still want the cheat sheet.
UBC, the acronym cheat sheet. That's great. So should any resolutions you want to get to the Union, the British Columbia municipalities, UBCM should go through SILGA, which is coming up, and the deadline is 24th. How much time? So it had to make it onto this meeting. And so what council was requesting through the strategic objectives was that Lillooet put forward a resolution that addresses the issue of the highly restrictive specific nature of BC building code that is developed in the Lower Mainland for a very particular environment, a very particular development environment. It's both the environment, rain, and the resources available in the Lower Mainland versus the whole rest of the province, the other 99%. So staff crafted the resolution, which is inside the body of the report, the long section, page 2 of it. Council is welcome to try to word it better, make amendments, but staff do believe this resolution should be sufficient to garner support at SILGA, hopefully, and from there make it to UBCM. Basically requesting that the province have less restrictive regulations that are more supportive of the development environment in central BC, in rural BC, small communities that don't have access to 100 development companies that can do all these things that the code is constraining for, and the expenses of some code elements that are very specific to the environment they have there versus different requirements we may have here. For example, the difference of focusing more on wildfire safety of a home and not being so particular about how rain comes into the roof. That is possible. But it's up to the province. When the code came in, they were trying to standardize the code. So no matter where a developer does work in the province, they knew what the code was. But they may have swung the pendulum too far. So council recognized that. I think a number of councils have recognized that. So staff are suggesting that if council agrees with the proposed resolution, if you endorse it, and it will be forwarded to SILGA for them to submit a membership about. If SILGA endorses it, then we go to the CM. If they endorse it, then we'll go with a package of resolutions that the BCM will hand to the province. The province would then be required to respond to every single resolution that's approved in the BCM. Whether or not it's simply a letter saying, great idea, we'll get back to you, which is what they do for a lot of them, or they may actually act on it. If they, especially if they see that there's a lot of support, they can see the person.
okay, I'm just gonna start off by saying that I think this is a really great resolution that pertains to the fairness of rural communities. Resolutions at UBCM are my favorite part of UBCM. I love to vote on them. They're so interesting. But I would ask that when this, if it's approved or endorsed tonight, that it will go to SILGA. I believe Councillor Weeb is the only one going to SILGA. And I ask that she represented obviously at SILGA and at UBCM.
Yeah, I respond.
Nope.
As of, through the mayor, as of our last SILGA meeting, I am actually on the resolution committee.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Have that in my report for later, but I'll let you know now.
Okay, so you will represent that resolution at UBCM as well. You'll speak to it, because you have to go up to the mic and be prepared to speak to it, and that's. Okay, Councillor McNary, go ahead.
In this thing, do we get to look at the resolutions ourselves? Or does somebody else just make a note? And go for it?
To look at them?
Yeah, like what are the actual resolutions that we're looking for?
Yes, we get to read them. We get a whole book at UBCM to go through all these resolutions, and they're passed. Like ours are passed at SILGA, which is the Southern Interior Local Government. But then there's the Northern and there's the Vancouver, and they all come together with their resolutions that have been passed at their local council and their local interior or whatever, the regional. And then they go to UBCM, and there's probably, I don't know, 200 of them. And you go through them and you pass, you vote. And you make a difference for this province. That's what you do.
Some people sing.
Because I think we're in the wrong one. I think we should be in the interior, not the coastal ones,
Southern Interior.
or southern interior.
We are.
So what is
Well, we
that,
are.
what does that consist of? Is that Cache Creek, Ashcroft? Yeah, okay.
And it's Clearwater, it's
Vernon, Barry.
Hamlets, it's all,
Okay.
that's what they call it, the Southern Interior.
But just for more knowledge.
Yeah.
Question.
Okay, any further questions? Councilor DeBruin.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I greatly appreciate the efforts from staff to take one of our strategic initiatives and translate it within one meeting into a resolution to be considered in SILGA and UBCM and all the other acronyms. I think that's great because it sort of shows that our strategic plan is actually in motion, doing things. And so I just want to say that I'm very appreciative of that. And initially, I thought this was coming from somebody else, and that we're just, saying like, yeah, we'll support this, but I understand that it is now coming, it is our initiative, so I really appreciate that. And I'm in support of sending this off to SILGA and Councillor Lee do her thing to convince all the other communities to support this. I guess differentiation in building codes to differentiate between the very urban setting of the Lower Mainland and the very different setting in the interior. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Further comments? Seeing none. Can I have a motion that the resolution included in the report dated February 8th, 2023, titled endorsement of 2023 UBCM resolution be sent to the Southern Interior Local Government Association's 2023 annual general meeting for consideration of inclusion at the 2023 Union of British Columbia Municipality Annual Convention. Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Plan, all in favor? Motion carried. Okay. 14, notice of motion, being none. 5, report. Okay, it's been a really crazy busy month for me, but I'm just gonna focus on one thing. One roundtable moment on what I've spent the majority of my time doing. Interior Health Leadership did a site visit to Lillooet Hospital on January 16th. Leadership included Diane Shendrick, Lisa Zanata, Karen Cooper, Michaela Swan. Anyways, they requested a meet and greet with the mayor and CAO, Mr. Deniker. I took this opportunity to present the project I've been working on for the past 5 years regarding the options of a new Sumac Suites, nursing residence, and medical clinic that would be located on Interior Health land. I also took the opportunity to speak with Megan Dell, Olivia Skagos Duncan, and Jeff Harrison about what our vision of sustainable healthcare delivery looks like for Lillooet. And with the help of Olivia and her talents, we produced a document of primary care, which highlighted a huge pull to bring back our surgical services and also to make Lillooet Hospital a destination for a CT scanner and other positive projects. I did a strong presentation for these initiatives, and I believe it was well received. And I know I'm biased here, but the staff at Lillooet Hospital is the most inspiring, dedicated bunch of people that work very hard to make this community all that it can be for rural medicine. And we are so lucky to have them advocating for us and for our future us. On January 25th, Interior Health President and CEO Susan Brown, along with Doug Cochran, Board Chair, and a few others, Ian Woods, Susan Dworsky, Jeff Harrison, and Mr. Deniger again, came to Lillooet Hospital, and I again presented this presentation, but in more detail. As a mayor, I spoke of densifying Lillooet properties, OCP changes to reflect increased residents moving in, demand on infrastructure, housing, recreational needs, and medical care. It again went very well, and I feel that I have the support, not yet the money, but the support of this initiative for a new medical clinic build, etc. After these meetings, I was then directed to compile an over 5 million capital funding request, which FYI, I have never done in my life, but I struggled through it day and night. For Lillooet, compiling stats and facts for the new build to encompass a medical clinic, a nursing residence, and a new cement suite, along with my BC Housing and BC Ambulance endorsements and our funding commitments for this project. Oh, I had to have it in by February 10th, but I had it actually in a couple of days early, just in case I needed some help there. Thanks to Mr. Deniger for supporting me at these meetings, and to Mr. Taylor for giving me the spreadsheet from the building perspective, which I included in my capital funding request, which is now sitting on the table. So I again have spent a good portion of this month on this project, and I'm ridiculously optimistic. But I have been for 5 years, and whether this gets any footing or not this year, it's at least on the table for coming years as a capital project, and no doors have been closed. Mr. Deniger and I are meeting with BC Housing again next Tuesday, February 21st, and I will keep reporting. So I'm informally sharing this initiative, and I'll be sending a letter in the coming weeks to council, to the South End community, and to the SLRD, just to share what I'm working on. But until I have a solid commitment, I don't need any approval to do what I'm doing, so it's hard to bring it and say, we approved something that I don't have any approval to do. So, but I hope that changes in the coming year, and they show me the money. And that's it for me.
Very impressive. Very good.
Awesome. Okay, Councilor DeBruin.
On that same day, I was doing something at the brewery. I much less stress than meeting with executive of Interior Health. I attended the AGM of the Chamber of Commerce. So the distillery or whatever it's called, the Chamber of Commerce. And at the AGM, it's very interesting to see the increase in membership from businesses as well as nonprofits in town. The chamber has grown from a couple of dozen members a couple of years ago to over 75 members, representing a very large majority of the businesses and organizations in town. It's also encouraging to see how the chambers working closely together with other community organizations like the Friendship Center and Community Hub and many others. So that's what I did for the 20th.
Thank you. Councilor Kwan.
I really have nothing significant to report this time.
Councilor McMary.
I went to the TNHD meeting in Kamloops. I learned that our hospital is gonna get some new lighting. They're gonna do that. And they're talking about buttons for our staff. They can talk back and forth, they can change the
voice there.
the voice area and whatnot. Other than that, they're pretty much focused on Kamloops. So we are gonna get some new lights for our operation. Operate like our surgical end of it, so they are thinking about that part. For sure.
They are, because they've spent $1 million on it, and it's sitting there and has been on pause for over a year now, so that's enough.
It's in their agenda.
Yeah. I know.
You're pushing buttons.
Councilor Reed.
Well, January 24th, I went to the NDIT meeting in 100 Mile in a snowstorm. And by the time I got to Clinton, I was phoning home and going, should I turn around? And he's like, God hates his word. So I carried on and it snowed until noon. But I did sit in on the orientation and then we had an open and a closed meeting. And I learned a few things. So the NDIT actually started as a result of the sale of BC Rail, which I never knew. I kind of wondered, well, what did we get from BC Rail sales, right? So $185 million was put into a fund for towns, cities, whatever, that were affected by the sale of BC Rail. And these funds are actually distributed. The interest off these funds is where we get our grants from NDIT. It was quite interesting. They also have a newsletter if anybody would like to subscribe to it. And last year at UBCM, sitting at our table, we had a young intern that was sponsored, I guess, through NDIT out of Kamloops. But they actually have an alumni program. So you could go online and, because I questioned, like, do we ever hear from these people again? Do we get to see if they become prime minister someday, or where do they go, right? Do they just spend the season down doing internship? So yeah, they do have an alumni program and it's amazing, the people that have gone through there, because he was so personable at our table. I just was enthralled at this young person and the knowledge he had and how outgoing he was and whatever. And then on January 25th, I attended a Silga Zoom meeting. We did issue a letter of support to the Ministry of Forests in regards to the pulp industry. There's a whole lot of things going on with the pulp industry that does not look good for Kamloops and areas or any of the pulp mills. As we all know, things are closing down. Yeah. And I was appointed to the Committee for Resolutions, Policy, and the Excellence Awards. We had some convention updates, and I wanted to bring up because it was something that, seeing as we have 3 new councillors, and I know Mayor Hopful knows about this, and maybe she's mentioned it to the new councillors. We did not know it our first term, but we found out our second term that LGLA, Silga, and UBCM, there's government certification programs for those. So if you attend these things, there is a form, maybe Mr. Deniker or someone can download it, or we can download it ourselves. I just remember that Mayor Bussey had suggested that we do it, and I know I've got 2 different certifications. I believe Mayor Hopwell has as well. So anyway, just for your interest, in case you want to move on, who knows where you want to go and where you might want to carry on. January 25th, that afternoon of the same day, which, yeah, 25th was a great day. I was a delegation to the SLRD board to promote the Silga convention, and I had this mini road show presentation to go forward. And I was so nervous. And then we had a glitch in the Zoom system, so I could not hear anybody in the room. But I did get.
But we could hear her.
I got a quick text from our Area B director, Vivian Birch Jones, saying, we can hear you, just go. So I did just go. But I did, I got to avoid question period because I couldn't hear them. So I just went and then left. But I did remind them for, because of Lillooet and where we're situated, the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District is actually a part of the Southern Interior Local Government Association. And I did kind of put a little promo thing out there that they might want to look outside of Squamish, Whistler, and Kemerton into the interior to see actually what was on. Because I think there's blinders on down there as well. It's like we're the sea to sky, and we're that little area that's kind of part of TNRD and part of SLRD and a member of Silga. So yeah, I'm glad it's over. That's my report.
Thank you, councillors. Hey. It's Gonzaga, I know you're excited. I know you are.
I've been at school since Thursday. Every day started at 8 AM and ended at 9. After that, I think I've been living on 5 hours of sleep for the last 5 days. I'm a little loopy, that's fine, so. I was taking a Capilano University course, it's through their School of Public and Government Administration. It's part of the program I'm taking to get a diploma in government administration. It's very specific for BC governments, and it's in partnership with the Local Government Management Association. Learned a ton. It was like drinking from the fire hose, which I'm sure you all remember from orientation and legal sessions. That's what I call it. So you know why empathy for the last 5 days, but got kids too. But this is some of my readings. Okay. Thinner books. It's a book called Who's Driving the Grader? So orientation, which you've started going through, is actually an ongoing, I've already given you yours. Orientation for council is an ongoing process. I'll tell you more as things go on, but I'm gonna read it as well so we can do book one. It's a short book, it's just taking notes, write in it, scribble on it, just taking notes, comments, and then we'll, after we've all had a chance to read it over next month or so, we can actually meet during lunch and learns or community of the whole, go over some topics. And then we can sort of talk about what we learned in this. So yeah, that's what I've been up to the last week. So I don't have a ton to say about operations because we're CAO was doing that. I haven't even had a chance to catch up with them. I drove directly from the course to the office to prep for now. Yeah, there's tons in here. I'll be sharing, dumping everything I've learned in upcoming meetings and training sessions. Very excited about it.
I have a question. What is the most interesting thing you learned? Off the top of your head,
Oh, there's a ton, actually. List.
the top. What?
One of the things that really stood out for me was the STARS model of understanding where the organization is in terms of its evolution. Is it a stable organization? Is it turnaround? Realignment? It's a process developed through Harvard schools. And specific to government organizations, government bodies. A lot of what we do in BC and Canada actually came out of historical developments in the early 1900s in the US as a response to the basically political corruption was ruling the cities. Came up a lot of good information about organizational culture. I feel like when I started here a few years ago, the focus was very much on big changes. So it became very clear to me doing the analysis of what people were turned around. That boat had to be stopped from scraping the iceberg. So now I've picked up a lot of tools of how to actually strengthen the culture of in the performance, which is a big part of the culture, is the performance of staff and the culture of the organization. So that we can do better, not just provide services, but really make people thrilled to get services. And one of the things I found very valuable when I gave feedback to the instructors of the courses, there was 2 instructors, one who had been a CAO and then got elected to be a mayor for a number of terms after she retired. Oh, who would do that? Right? Actually, a few in the province. So one was the CAO who became a mayor, and the other was just a previous CAO. But I was really struck by the shock that her name's Allison. She was in shock when she had to sit at that table after spending decades at this seat. When she took that seat, she thought it'd be easy. It's just the other side of the table, and she was in shock at how difficult it was to make that transition. And it really hit home. I mean, there's 32 CAOs from across the province, 1/6 of all CAOs in the province for this course, and the really hit home to me how difficult the job is for you. Both at the professional level and here, going into it with really not knowing what you're getting yourselves into. And I think all the CAOs in the classroom really reflected on it. And this is our career. We've been doing this for decades. And here's your orientation manual. Good luck. See you at the next meeting. So it was a really good eye opener for I think all of us around to really try to empathize and put ourselves in their shoes, which we'll never be able to do until they run for office. She didn't recommend it, but it's a really good experience, and I've made an effort with now 31 other friends. They call it on each other, listening for like, how are you dealing with these issues? Because there's a lot of brain power in local government, but we all work in our own little bubbles because the work is overloading, so we forget to look out, seek solutions for others. So that's the other big value going to professional development, is just making that network of other professionals. You can very notably not trying to read. I would do. Just keep it exciting every day.
It's good camaraderie. Councilor Weaver.
Through the mayor, can I ask you a question? So 1/6 of all the CAOs in the province, is that kind of hard for what attends these things, or do you know? Like, that just seems like a really, do all these other people think they know everything, or? The other 5, 6,
So immediately, so this was a course specifically, it's called the Successful CAO.
Mhm.
This CAOs were successful at it, are we doing the best we can? So what I saw around the room was a diversity of CAOs that have never seen a conference course before. There is a generational shift going on right now, and we see it in every industry, but very much in the public sector. Their public sector jobs are pretty stable. But there's an aging out going on right now. So there's a whole new generation of senior management. So there's a lot of interest. So when they held this course, there were the waivers. It could have been twice as many people. In communities that without their CAOs for a while. Yeah, there's a real interest from a new generation of professionals who really want to be the best at this job, which is an incredibly unique job. And then following it, if I not want to come back to this council meeting, which is far more interesting, but there's a CAO forum going right now. It's still on where I would say at least half of the CAOs in the province are there right now. Taking, well, as you would at a typical conference, seminars on particular topics, just the networking, professionals. But yeah, these courses are very popular. It's Capilano University and LGU working together to make sure that it's a training. It's not just theoretical education, it's training from experienced, exceptional, as they call it, the creme de la creme of CAOs who've proven their mental for 30 years in business. She's very good leaders.
Thanks.
Get some knowledge of those guys.
Good questions? No. Okay. New business, 18.1. 18.1, and that was Councillor Flan had pulled out true letter of support.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, it's a shame that this letter came in so late. I'm all for more courses for education and training, upgrading for Lillooet residents. There's really not that much out there for people. As I said, unfortunately, it came in too late for us to actually support them in this. So I'm wondering if we could ask staff if they could send an email or contact TRU just to explain that all requests like this actually have to come through a council meeting before we can support anything, and just unless they don't know that, and maybe send them the dates of council meetings. So if something does come to them again, that they have a bit of more of a timeline and know how to get in contact just beforehand.
Yes, Madam Mayor, we'll do that with them. It'll be a little easier going into March, because we're getting into the two month election cycles, so that turnaround times. Did I say election cycle? No,
We're not doing elections every time.
No, please not.
Apparently haven't I? So we're getting into 2 meetings a month, so the deadlines won't be as hard and fast, but yes, we will send off the schedules and then let them know what our deadline is to get on the agenda.
Okay. Councillor Weaver.
I'm looking at chapter 2 here. You don't know what you don't know. So with our favorite saying for about 4 years.
Yeah.
Could somebody please tell me what administrative fundamentals micro-credential training is?
A mouthful.
Well, I don't feel.
It's got to be useful to somebody.
Okay, so we're not asking, they're not asking, well, they were asking, we've not met that deadline, so can we go on to accept a letter as written? Can I have a motion to accept that one as written? Councillor Reed, Councillor DeBruin, all in favor? Carried, okay, and 18.2 SPCA.
Okay.
Attachment for this. Councillor Glenn?
Yes, through the mayor. Yeah, this one just came through this afternoon through Mr. Taylor. It's unfortunate Miss Ally was here and she did leave earlier here. She could have maybe explained a bit more here. But the Lillooet Animal Advocacy Society, they have been doing some really good work. There's a lot of cat colonies around here. I know there's lots in the hop farm there. So the spay and neuter program through BC SPCA, I think that we should be sending a letter to support them. They're not looking for funding from us. They're just asking for support to be able to apply for funding through the BC SPCA.
So are you making that motion?
Yeah, I guess I am. Thank you.
Okay, second. Councillor McNary. Mr. Taylor, do you have that motion?
The council send a letter of support for the Lillooet Animal Advocacy Society in support of their application for the grant funding to the SPCA.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, on to media and public question period. Questions? Mr. Vanderwall,
I haven't got a question, but I got a comment
but you're gonna form it in the,
on it's on the Invasive Species Society. They're working diligently to eliminate the alien species. But I'll give you a little history. A few years back, matter of fact, quite a few years back, I belonged to the Cattlemen's Association. And we were into, we called them noxious weeds in those days. And I was in charge of the committee of noxious weeds. The chairman of the Cattlemen's Association was Gordy Scheller. And he asked me the question, he said, how is the knapweed doing? I said, don't worry about it, Mr. Chairman, it's doing fine. Now, here we are, 25 years down the road. I don't know how much money, time, and effort has been spent on knapweed, but I still think it's doing fine.
so that was, did you know? Okay, thank you. Yes, Mark.
Two things. Herb Blaine was named after the original owner of the country store who had a restaurant there. And he owned the property behind. And he sold that property to the present owner. I don't know what happened to her.
What
But
was his name?
Herb, I don't know his last name.
Was it Essex?
I have to look in my book.
I think it was Essex.
Yeah, and he originally had a restaurant there. Before it was then became a country store. Interesting, it could be it. And I've got it written in one of my books, but that's how Herb Lane. And there's quite a bit of property there that is owned by the present owner. And the original plan was for that road to connect with Reynolds Road as a Girl Street, because there's so much land there to be developed by the present owner who won't be developing it.
Oh, it's awesome to know.
My second question is concerning Eagles present and that property there. And I'm wondering how council can grandfather an illegal action when it was put in there originally. The original local government saying was that you cannot grandfather an illegal action.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That is correct. It can't be grandfathered. However, you can grant a variance, to your existing bylaws. So it wouldn't just be able to sit there without a variance and say, well, it's always been there, so that's it, because it wasn't legally established at any point. But that's what the variance process is there for, and you can use it to legitimize something that was put there, in contrary to the rules at any point. But you couldn't just say, oh, it's grandfathered because it was there when I last left.
So they need this variance in order to carry
That's
it.
correct.
But you're still legitimizing something that was illegal
That is correct.
and opening up a can of worms.
The variance
Oh,
process
that's
is a discretionary authority of council, so it doesn't tie you to any precedent. Thank you. Doesn't, so you can take into account the context of every situation, and if it works in one context, it might not work in another context.
Do we know that it was an illegal act? I mean, I don't know when the building was built, but do we know what the bylaws and setbacks were then? And I mean, I assume that there was a building permit and that may have been, I don't know. But it is clear that it doesn't conform to our current bylaws, and therefore the variance is required. And
I mean, the sheds weren't on the property, so they couldn't have conformed at any point. The setback to the property line. Honestly, if it's not a problem, we don't spend too much time researching Pat through the 2018, 2011 and earlier bylaws to see if it was legally established. If it's something that if somebody applied for today and we wouldn't look too unfavorably on it, fine. It doesn't create a fire life safety issue, fine. The point is that it is there, legally established or not, and we're not going to make them cut off a corner of their house. So in order to not create a problem for a future owner, or the current owner who did just purchase it, supporting the variance didn't hurt anybody else or create any former character issues for the rest of the neighborhood.
Kind of like legal non-conforming.
Not at all.
All right. Yeah, Councilor McNary.
31 years ago, I applied for a building permit and building guy, or I know who he was, told me you don't need one. That was 30 years ago, and I did need. Just a little heads up the way things used to be. So we're gonna take that into consideration. If it was legal or not. Legal.
Madam Mayor, that's a very good point. There's a lot in town that has been allowed to happen. And in spite of my reputation, we are trying to be understanding of the history.
Thank you.
Quick question, totally different topic, because I believe this is going into a closed session next, so I might not be able to ask that question. Was there a letter received from Sawali Food Truck for today's meeting? I was gonna ask that question, but I'm not sure if that made it or not.
Madam Mayor, and nothing has been submitted that is on this agenda now.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none. And I have a resolution that the meeting of the District of Lillooet Council be closed to public pursuant to the Community Charter Provisions, Section 91A. Councilor McNary, seconded by Councilor Reed. All in favor? Thank you. I'll do a 5-minute recess. And we'll close.